Hey, Black girl. How's everyone doing? Welcome back to another segment of Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. If you don't know me by now, my name is Ursula B. I'm the podcast host of Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. Um, right now, if you are listening on the audio, please follow me and just listen along. If this is on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Both formats share to some of your closest friends. And especially if there's someone who is a partner or you've seen it in someone and you've always wondered, why do they act this way? They're grown. They should know better by now. No, that is not always the case. Just because someone is grown does not mean that they should automatically act mature. That is not the case. Some people can be emotionally stunted. And if you look at this thumbnail, at the picture, these two brothers right here are two examples of how when you're dating someone and how you can spot them because you're wondering and you're baffled, why do they act X way? You fill in the blame. But sometimes we give people more credit than we should because I'm just using an example. Someone is 35 years old and they're acting childish. Well, just because the chronological age does not always match up with the emotional age. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So I watch Ready to Love. And if you're listening on the audio, the picture I have up is a picture of some of the cast members, Chase and Laron. There's others, but I can only fit so much. But this is just their actions on the past episode really made me think on how people can be emotionally immature and we expect more from them. But sometimes people can only give at their own capacity. And what motivated this episode is when Maya, she's the one that was dating Laron. Oh, she's so cute to me, such a pretty woman. But her and Laron got, and we'll get into the details in a minute, but her and Laron got in an argument. And so she said to him, well, you should know because we're grown, you're grown. And I was thinking, ma'am, no, he is not. He is not. So let's get into it. I'm going to play a couple of videos, but first we're going to talk about some of the things I saw in the video, in the episode with Ready to Love. So like I said earlier, Laron had gotten in an argument with Maya, and they were out somewhere, and she was talking to a man, and he went off on her. He was calling her all kind of B's. He told her F you. And this is just in a dating stage. Okay? So he's going off, and just because he saw her talking to another man, she said she knew him, but obviously it was a trigger point for him to go off like that. And some of the things that he said was that he gets a little angry when he's been drinking, and he's not going to look like a simp, and he acts this way, meaning the aggressive, and really it was verbal abuse. Let's just keep it real in what it is. But he said he acts that way because he's from Jersey. Really? So because of where you were born? The point I'm trying to make is that he obviously was not regulating his emotions, and it seemed like he has a history of this. But it really sounds like he's just throwing an adult tantrum. And sometimes we cannot see that because we would expect more from someone who is not a child or a teenager to act mature. But just because they're in a man's body with facial hair, it does not matter. Sometimes they are emotionally immature. So I'm going to play this video just so you can get, and I'm going to play it with Chaz as well as Laron. So now that you have a little bit more uh, to pique your interest, you let me know what you see. And also, I want you all to let me know if you know of anyone who is a choice.
Oh, you don't want it to.
Hold on one second, you all. We're going to play the correct video in a minute. Give me one moment. But while I get it set up, yeah, let me know if you have mistaken someone to be mature and you just wonder why they act the way they do and you're giving them more credit than what.
Why does Maya think you call her a bitch?
Because I
Yeah.
know my mouth is kind of crazy when I get mad.
Yeah, real crazy. I do have a little concern with dating guys that, get angry quick. How are you when you drink? Like, you think that's something you could control?
I don't think I get angry quick.
You
I
don't?
think when I'm placed in certain situations, I may or may not control.
You don't want it to start affecting other people you like and love, so. Why does Maya think you call her a bitch?
Because I did. And I said, F this situation because she was hugged up with some dude. Like, you're not going to embarrass me like that. I'm not going to be no simp.
Saying F you to me or call me out my name. Is that normal for you?
I don't think it's normal. I think it's bad.
Laron was heated. I'm not getting a guy's number in his face. Like, I'm just speaking to somebody at a club, a social event. So if you can't handle that, you're not secure enough within yourself, you really can't handle me at all.
I can get jealous a little bit and a little possessive.
Yeah.
No, my mouth is kind of crazy.
This week, Tommy wants us to have our family meet the guys. So I invited Laron out to meet my mom. And I am a little nervous. Laron and I recently met up at a club and we got into this argument. Thank you so much. A guy that I know came up and spoke to me. Laron was so angry, calling me this kind of B, this and that F you. At this point, I definitely have some huge concerns with Laron. Hey, Mom, what's up?
So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it today.
Really? Are you okay?
Yeah, I have a bunch of things I have to do, and then I'm not going to be able to make it.
Well, I'll let him know, but we'll definitely have to reschedule.
Yeah.
All right, take care. Love you. Bye. Okay.
Hey, man.
Hi, how you doing? Good to see you.
Man.
Thank you. I was supposed to have my mom come today, but she said we got to reschedule.
Oh, man.
Last minute, yeah, I know.
Until I'll be there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
The women are in power this week.
I
Tommy
can.
wants us to have our family meet the guys. So I invited Laron out to meet my mom. And I am a little nervous. Laron and I recently met up at a club.
All right.
Into this argument. Thank you so much. A guy
So
that I know.
you all get the point. All right. So you all get the point. So that was a lot. Laron gets on my nerves. He is so immature. Chaz is as well. We'll get into him in a minute. But let's talk about what an emotionally immature person, how it can look. In some cases, it can look like a lack of communication. This is very clear. Sometimes immature people may struggle to express their feelings or listen to their partner's needs, and they may avoid difficult conversations or resort to silence when faced with conflicts. Okay. Clearly, if you cannot see it, this is an example of how Laron acted. He's avoiding the difficult conversation. He's not taking accountability and he's putting it on her. So instead of talking about what the real issue is, just the lack of communication. Chaz, he also in one of the episodes, he left the house. It was an overnight weekend stay, and he abandoned his connections. So that is a sense of a silent treatment. Okay. So they also can be seen through insecurity and jealousy. They can display excessive jealousy or insecurity and seeking constant reassurance from their partners and becoming possessive or controlling. These men right here, extreme insecurity. I don't know. I understand this is a dating show, but it seemed like Chaz is just picking up anybody. I don't know. It's just for that constant sense of validation. He's a nice looking guy. He's not my type, but he's not ugly by any means. But just getting that sense of always needing that sense of validation from the women. And of course, this other brother, he is extremely jealous because look how he just went off on the young lady. Okay. And if you still don't understand what I'm saying, if you can to give you an example of jealousy, insecurity, and seeking constant reassurance from their partners, go back to Love is Blind and Chelsea and Jimmy. That's the woman that had the whiny voice and was always counting the times that Jimmy was affectionate to her, and she's creating all these fights with him, these imaginary scenarios. That's a perfect example of insecurity and jealousy. All right, here we go. So another way to spot is avoidance of responsibility. An emotional, immature person, it's like they truly do not have the ability to take responsibility for their own actions or their decisions. Instead of owning up to their mistakes, they may blame others or make excuses. Example, we just saw it in the video. Laron's talking about, oh, I'm from Jersey. So, sir, just because you're from Jersey does not give you the permission to call her or anyone else out of their names and cuss them out. That's, ego is something else. Will prevent people ego prevents some healthy relationships. Some people rather walk on glass and then have alcohol poured on their feet rather than say a true authentic apology, or you know what, my bad, and something, apologize with change behavior. No, they rather stick to the end. It's wild to me. And I saw that growing up, and I could just never, as a child, I just never could understand because I used to think it was so simple. So yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. And if you can think about if someone would just take responsibility, and instead of trying to be knowing you're wrong, but trying to be right at the same time, can you imagine the decreased amount of arguments that could happen? If you're listening to my voice, I want you to let me know. Type in the chat. Have you ever had a disagreement, an argument with someone who has avoided taking responsibility for their actions? Or have you been that person? I've been both. I'll admit, even though these men right here get on my nerves, I do have a sense of grace just because I've been there before. But this is where it comes into doing the work and on yourself, where you can become responsible for your own actions. All right, so mood swings. And some people who are emotionally immature, they can have unpredictable mood swings, and it can make it very challenging for their partners to understand and navigate their emotions. I'm going to tell you all a quick story. I won't go into too much detail, but growing up, I had a parent and they would come home in a bad mood, right? And now as an adult, I can understand why they could have, and nothing's wrong with having a bad day, But the issue came in is with the mood swings and the unpredictability. When 5 o'clock would come around, you just don't know what was going to come through the door, which mood was going to show up at 5 o'clock. And I do know that that person had an extremely difficult way of expressing their emotions. So it's just easier to come out with anger. Not saying that's right, but when you don't do the work on yourself, and if it's always quote unquote someone else's fault, yeah, you'd be angry. So it can take a toll on someone's psyche who's on the other end of it, and you're always on guard. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, just imagine you're around someone and you're walking on eggshells, or you're walking and you don't know what word you're going to say will be that landmine and everything's going to blow the hell up. All right, another way to spot an emotionally immature person is self-centeredness. And emotional immaturity a person can make their own needs number one above everyone else's and their own needs and desires. And so they in turn show little empathy or consideration for other person's feelings. Okay. So like this Chaz person, he was extremely self-centered. When he left the getaway, he made 4 connections, but he just left. He wasn't even thinking about him abandoning everyone, no consideration whatsoever, and didn't even think about anyone else's feelings whatsoever. And this in turn, and there's much more. These are just a few of many, but if you're the person on the other end, the receiving end of this, being around someone, a partner who is emotionally immature, it can really cause a significant amount of emotional pain. And how it can show up is feeling unheard and invalidated. And when a partner struggles with communication and dismisses their feelings, you can feel like you're you're just invalidated, you're unimportant, and it can lead to you feeling just lonely in your relationship. Sometimes you carry the entire load. And when I say the load, meaning the emotional load of the relationship, which in turn causes frustration, resentment. Okay. Let me know in the chat. Do you feel like you've ever carried the emotional load? And on the tail end, when that relationship ends, because you've poured and invested so much in that person and in the relationship, and you have no idea who you are when the relationship is done. All right. You can also make you feel like you have low self-esteem. It could be constant criticism or lack of emotional support. It can chip away at someone's self-esteem. And in turn, you can feel unworthy or unlovable. Mm. That kind of makes me think of AD from Love is Blind. I know her father passed away, but I'm very curious what that relationship was like. Because it's very obvious if you look at it through the lens of her. And I'm not saying this and I'm not digging at her whatsoever. But you can just see how she feeds off of validation from people, especially with the men. And you remember when Clay left her at the altar, and she said it in the pods before too, that she just felt unlovable. And what else can she do? But that's what happened. So it just makes me wonder. I really want to know what that relationship was like with her father. And she said she did go into therapy because of it, but I just want to know. I'm sure there's some parallel differences. All right. So the anxiety and stress can also be a result. And I talked about that earlier, when you feel like you're walking on eggshells and dealing with mood swings, jealousy, constant uncertainty in the relationship. It can feel like a roller coaster. a constant roller coaster. I don't care if you like roller coasters. If you stay on a roller coaster long enough, you're going to feel sick, dizzy, that the anxiety and stress, and it can affect your mental and emotional well-being. Isolation. Sometimes you can feel isolated or alone in a relationship and unable to connect with your partner on a deep emotional level or share your innermost thoughts and feelings. Mm. Yeah, that's a lot right there. That's a hard pill to swallow. I've always talked about being in a relationship with someone who you have no intimacy. And I'm not talking about the sexual intimacy, but the emotional intimacy. And then you're in this relationship and you have now become familiar strangers. So over time, with these unresolved issues and unmet emotional needs, it can lead to resentment and anger. It can just boil over and it can create a toxic cycle of conflict and negativity within the relationship. So when you go through all these kind of relationships with an emotionally immature person, it requires patience, understanding, and to have clear boundaries. And it's essential for women to recognize this when you're in a relationship because it can be harmful. So instead of the patience, you definitely want to consider your own well-being above all else. And sometimes it may be necessary, not sometimes, it's always necessary to prioritize your self-care, but you maybe you may have to walk away from a relationship if it just constantly and consistently undermines your emotional health and happiness. I remember talking to this one person, and she said that her relationship was so unhealthy. She felt so alone. She said it was toxic. She said she wanted to get out, but she didn't know how. And she said it felt like a constant drip of morphine. And she just said, I don't know. I just don't see myself being partners with him anymore. I mean, that's something else. If you, it's like a slow death, but you're still alive. You know, we're on here on this earth to live a life of happiness and emotional well-being. Why don't you take a look at this slide right here? This credit goes to Nidra Tawib. I love her social media. She talks about boundaries a lot. And so here are her 12 signs of people who are emotionally immature and what they may do. They may refuse to accept responsibility. They treat you poorly when they're upset. If you all recognize any of these, put a 1 in the chat. Or put yeah, put a 1 in the chat, or even share your story of how any of this resonates. They share their issues with you, with others. Wait, they share their issues about you with others, but not to you. They deny things they said, only that they could have said. It sounds like they can distort your reality. All right, they try to forgive you, but they will always say you're overreacting when you are stating your own needs and wants. They may cuss you out or yell when you bring up issues or leave. They encourage you to dislike the people they dislike. They spread malicious gossip. That is a smear campaign. I've experienced that before, and it is not a good feeling, especially from people who you would never think that that would happen. It would come from. All right. They believe that they're never wrong. If you're never wrong, you deny yourself the permission to course correct or even to build a stronger relationship. They chronically offer unsolicited and unhealthy advice, become defensive when corrected, or see little value in reconsidering their behavior. How frustrating is that? And you wonder why that there's the isolation, and you cannot connect with your person because you can't say anything. Man. All right, I'm going to put up this other slide right here. So we talked a lot about what it looks like to be emotionally immature. Okay. But, at Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together, we are solution based. So let's talk about signs of emotional maturity. We can use this for ourselves as well. I know I was talking about how we can spot it in our partners, but being emotionally mature is on both ends, because sometimes we look at our partner's faults, but we fail to look in the mirror at our own. I've done that before. So signs of emotional maturity can be a game changer. So we'll talk about what is it like to be emotionally mature. Let's see. Well, it's a beautiful thing because it's not like you're blaming yourself or being a martyr. You just want to look at yourself. And if you don't know how to get started, you can just ask yourself, what can I do to fix this? Or what can I do differently? That would probably be the best way. What can I do differently? So, emotional maturity doesn't mean having all the answers or being the wisest person in the room. No. To be emotionally mature is to have the ability to control your responses to a situation, or to take a step back and consider what caused it, its context, who are the key players. Because remember, sometimes we forget our own self as a key player, and what motivations prompted the actions, the fallout, and how it can impact those who are affected, and seeing a bigger picture. Okay. Our mistakes and our emotions, our needs and our wants, all of these are valid, and it works in taking time into consideration. But an emotionally mature person can do this. And while also being thoughtful and intentional about expressing their own feelings and responses to the unpredictabilities that life puts on us. Because life be lifing. It does. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it is just easy to go off, but that's a defense mechanism that is so unhealthy. Oh, but I ain't gonna lie, sometimes it just to go off and let that steam off. But yeah, that's not the right thing to do. So some things we can do is the ability to recognize and admit when you're wrong, because it's so much easier to be defensive and deny responsibility, or just become overwhelmed with shame and guilt for our own faults I don't say our faults, but our own imperfections. And being able to acknowledge when we're in the wrong, it takes so much humility, self-compassion, and courage. It also takes swallowing that pill, falling on that sword sometimes. Woo! It hurts, but you know what? It definitely makes you a lot more well-rounded person. I'm going to read a quote from Dr. Sherry Campbell. She is one of my favorite psychologists. She talks a lot about emotionally immature family members, and she goes in. But I'm going to read this. She said, emotionally mature people spend zero time blaming others for their problems. They take accountability for their actions as a way to further learn and grow. I love that. It's all about the growth. Life and life circumstances at the end of the day have to be dealt with from our own will and volition. And admitting wrong is woven deeply into the fabric of mature people because they view humility and admitting wrong as steps up the mountain, not steps going backward. The mature person is able to understand that life is what they make of it, that every person's destiny is within their choice. And those with maturity live life making conscious decisions, knowing that whatever the result is, they are the ones responsible. Ooh, I love that. Mm, that's some good stuff. So let's get back to the slide. All right. So another sign of emotional maturity is being able to recognize and accept your own feelings and needs. You know, we come back to being connected to ourselves. We've been sometimes conditioned to be so disconnected just out of survival mode, but getting back to yourself, you'll be able to recognize and accept your own feelings and needs. You can take a pause between feeling and reacting. Mm, that's a good one right there. I'll have to post. I made a another video a long time ago about reacting and responding. It's a story I'm not too proud of, but I'll have to go back in the crates and I'll repost it. But there is a difference, and taking that pause, that can definitely be the game changer. Believe it or not, taking a breath sometimes and stepping back will be a game changer on how you respond to someone. All right, so you can take a step back and not take it all so personally. I'm going to share a story about that. So a a family member, this was a while ago. We got in this big argument, and at the time I couldn't see it, and I always wondered why they would react the way they did, and it was so bad. But once I started trying to become aware of my own actions, I can see it in others. And when I saw this person, the way they were reacting, because they have some severe unhealed childhood experiences that never was worked on, and this is how it comes out as a much older adult. And I saw that person for the 12-year-old that they really are. And when I say the 12-year-old, I'm talking about the emotionally stunted 12-year-old. And the way that they were acting, oh my God. Even though they were an aged person, they were having an adult tantrum, a meltdown. And that was the first time that I used to have so much resentment towards this person. I still do, but it's not to the intensity as it was. And I actually felt sorry for them. I really did. Because I saw a 12-year-old acting out right in front of me, but they were not. They chronologically, they were much older, but emotionally, I saw a 12-year-old little person. So it was at that moment when I didn't take anything so personal. It still stung, but the intensity level was definitely dialed down. I just wanted to share that a little bit. On my Patreon, I'll go much deeper and you'll know who it is and the story and all of that. But moving on, another sign of an emotionally mature person is the ability to express humility and gratitude, the resilience to demonstrate positivity and optimism. I'm not talking about toxic positivity, but positivity. One of my new coaches, she says she always tries to find the silver lining, but she's not being toxic about it, but she definitely shows her gratitude. And I subscribe to that as well. Another sign is to recognize and admit when you're being biased. the ability to love through compassion, being able to set healthy boundaries. I love that. You're not denying yourself. It's actually a form of self-love. Maintain. Oh, if you want to talk about boundaries, if you go to the video with the Thrive Vibe tribe, we talk about boundaries and self-love and self-care. Another sign is to maintain your composure. You can have grit, but you can also endure some of the setbacks in grace. And I love this one, the capacity to listen in order to understand. Let me know in the chat, do you listen to understand or do you listen to be right? There's a big difference, huge difference. All right, you know what? I think I'm done. So stay tuned for more videos and recaps. You know, some of these shows are so good because it's a blueprint on different life experiences, like watching these couple of these men I'm talking about on this show. But when you have different eyes and ears, oh my God, you can see everything so much differently. And it is a game changer in your life. So make sure if anything resonated with you, I want to ask you if you have any other ways that you can spot an emotionally immature person, drop it in the chat. You want to be messy, put their name in the chat. No, I'm joking. But make sure you like this video, share it to some people. You know, we want to be emotionally mature. So share it to some people. Subscribe to the channel and follow me on any podcast that you're listening on. Bye, Black girl.